is Thursday, Paladins fans, and that means it's time to kick off another week here in the PPC. Myself, Dolson, and Goremizer will walk you through the European portion of our sets today. Gore, it's getting to be grind time. Paladins World Championships just around the corner. So for some of these teams, this will be the final look we get at them moving in to some of those final games later on. Chromaspace Mixalizub is where we'll start it off.
Yeah, they only have 2 more weeks to play this week included in that. Next week will be the last one that we see of them before they go forward with it. And there's a lot to be said because things are a little more regional due to all of the travel things that would have to happen otherwise, and I guess that aren't available to us. These are teams that really need to pop off. I mean, Chromaspace has definitely been able to do so a little more recently. They're starting to find some more favorable matchups. They've jumped up from what I believe was like a 3-7, even before that, maybe 2-7 team to now a 5-8 team. So they're definitely hitting their stride at what could arguably be the best time for it. I mean, you know, they're still not taking down Clown Fiesta and Yoinkers, but I mean, we've said this before. Sometimes all you need is one really good day, one good weekend, and it can change things around. And this is the perfect time for them to start popping.
And they are getting very close to that top 4 spot. Right now, they are only behind Celestial as far as map differential goes. So, at least on paper, as of this matchup, if this is one that Chromaspace can come out on top of, they'll leap up into that 4th place spot there in the standings. Jaguar Falls is where we will kick off this matchup. Pretty standard there, Goremizer. Yeah. This is the type of map where teams can play their style and whatever they want can work, provided you play it well enough.
Yeah, I love this map because of that, and I think it's a good one. Again, for Chromaspace right now, you know, you're looking for wins. You're looking to, ideally, you want to make it faster, like you had said. Right now, you're really trailing only in map differential. Maybe depending on how the sets go this week, that changes. But you want to try to jump into the top 4 just for the sake of it at this point. And Chromaspace, a 3-0 here would do wonders for your map differential and trying to close that gap so that if things do stay tied, you know, either both wins, both losses for them and that 4th place team, then you're closing that gap little by little and catching up. Historically, this has been one that goes a little further, though. I think 3-1 the first time they played, 3-2 the last time they played. So unless Chromaspace have something really fresh and really new to bring out, we might not be able to see them make that 3-0 jump.
I imagine we'll see a pretty competitive set here. That's what we've sort of seen in a lot of these regions, is those bottom teams pesky enough to take some maps off the higher-up teams in those regions. Not necessarily strong enough, though, to take the full set on a consistent basis. Mixalizub looking for their 2nd win in this phase of the PPC. Inara had been MIA. I think that was, what, Brazil or North America we casted together last week, and Inara was just, like, not there. We were so confused as to why we were not seeing more Inara, but over here in EU, I suppose she still holds that top priority spot.
Yeah, man, I can't remember, like you said, like the regions, like, because it's been a few times that it's happened where, how many times did I have to say, I'd like to see more Inara in a day? Like, it's just a phrase that I wasn't personally used to having in my vocabulary. It doesn't come up too often. But I think there's a lot of merit to this. Unfortunately, I think Mixalizub is one of those teams. There's been a few others that they first pick her every time. When you go back to it, I believe it was Europe last week, and you look at teams like Clown Fiesta, Yoinkers, they were glancing over this Inara every single time. But these teams down maybe a little bit lower, granted, favor her so heavily, and I'll be honest, I still think she's the best frontline in the game. I don't think there's a lot that comes out of anybody else. I think her setup is really good. The wall can be used offensively and defensively, and so I think there's a lot of merit to her being first pick. But it's been the rise of this Makoa on the other side, and it feels weird. Like, he had the highest of highs years ago, dropped into nothingness, and now has slowly started to climb his way right back up. And I think between him and Willow, you get one good hit scan here for Chromaspace. It's a really, really good link together for their team.
This is going to be a fun battle of the front lines to watch, and Inara Ash, very, very strong there for Mixalizub, though we've sung the praises now of this Makoa. Barrick has started to see this rise in play as well. People have started to feel more comfortable weaving him into some drafts, so this is maybe one that starts to get one on the front lines, depending on how these teams are able to play it. Similar mindsets, maybe, between the two there. Xin Lian, that is a damage duo of old there, Gore, and then a Maldama to round out for healing. Mixalizub, I think that is standard, all things considered, well-rounded effectively in every department.
Yeah, it's what you would draft. Like, if you were just in a vacuum and you were told, I need to draft on Jag Falls, that needs to just win. Like, blanket statement, it just needs to be able to go in and win the game no matter what's on the other side. that's pretty much what you would get. Ashe, Inara, Xin, Leon, Moldamba. Every single one of those is an incredibly safe pick. They all have their own merits. They've all found their own success. Leon maybe a little less than some of the other hit scans that we've seen, but I think this is a really solid map for it, and I think the matchup against the Willow is going to be very important here for them. But when I look at Chromaspace, I see a team that's leaning out into not only just the map, but their playstyle, right? A lot of weight on Barrack and Makoa. They haven't, at least this year, had a really good, solid performance, but Makoa's been on the rise. I think people have figured out the new Barrack after those big nerfs that took away a lot of his sustainability. And so you know that Buck is going to perform. You know Willow's going to perform. You know Grover's good on this map. As long as the front lines show up, Chromaspace are going to have a little bit of an advantage just because of that pluck.
Right, it seems like Mixalizub, not for good or bad, they didn't necessarily take any risks with their draft. I mean, it's tried and true, very standard, all things considered. Chromaspace, a little bit of spice in there to round things out. I think this Willow's going to be a big difference maker in this one. If you're able to plug some shots, control some space around those corners, lock down a lot of that Moldamba healing, I think things maybe start to look good for you here on this front. Gore, I mean, you look at these two teams, you look at these two drafts, do you think this one is really just execution-based? Or do you see a lopsided, maybe a event, one way or the other, just based on the drafts?
So part of it will be how often this Leon can deal with Willow. If that's a very consistent matchup for Mixalizub, then it doesn't matter what Chromaspace do. They're missing a DPS at that point. Grover can put a lot on the table. Makoa can put a lot on the table. But this Willow, as you had kind of highlighted, feels essential to make this draft work for Chromaspace. And outside of that specific matchup, which I guess falls on the Willow, falls on Buck a little bit to maybe play safety, there's a lot of, like you said, high just execution threshold. Maybe not so high for Mixalizub, middle of the road. Ashe, she's got a lot of cool tech that will showcase itself in the event that you get the opportunities for some of that high execution. But for the most part, you have to fall on Makoa. If he's not hitting his hooks, if those don't connect consistently, then who cares? It's like he doesn't even exist in the game, right? But as long as those come through, I would say even 70% of the time, then you're going to be just fine trying to lock them down. I think that's exactly the way this is going to work. As long as you find that Makoa and everything kind of rides or dies on him, should be fine.
Yeah, no extra pressure, I don't think, on the front line of Chromaspace there. All that being said, agree with you, Gormizer. Let's jump on in. Game number 1 between Chromaspace and Mixalizub. Mixalizub, remember, looking for that second win here in this phase of the PPC, and the Makoa already being bullied out, locked in with effectively everyone on Mixalizub. That's now a cool swing for first blood. Luckily, though, Chromaspace able to start building up some of that point percentage, 30%, and both teams now sort of splitting this mid-fight one side or the other, but it's Chromaspace feeling maybe a little bit more comfortable with their positioning.
Yeah, and even though it's projectiles, like you can see at this range, when Zin's able to get back there, Uber's Payday is going to have a great time against the Willow. But the thing that's mixed up to me is that Mixalizub win that fight. They kill Makoa off early. It's 75-6. I mean, Chromaspace haven't left the point.
They sure haven't, and it's not looking like they will anytime soon. Now, Princess Pecha will fall. Now Kagin will strike for a kill, though. Can you get the Makoa down? You sure can, as Adium will turn around a good bit of damage there. Chromaspace in very controlling position now. This Willow starting to get left unchecked. You just need a touch on the back there. Luckily, the Ashe turns around, resets the overtime. Can Adium win this duel? Flutter will get him up and away, and the Fae Flight might just seal the deal here. This one looked great for Chromaspace, but it's actually Mixalizub now that have fought their way back in.
Yeah, just a little bit of unshakiness, a couple of missteps here from Chromaspace that have led them down the rabbit hole, but is now getting a kill earlier.
There you go.
That I think pivoted away. With now gone, Devzy gone, it makes it a lot easier for them to move in.
Yeah, Princess Pecha is going to be the last line of defense here. And this Leon does not look long for this world. The wall will extend the life just a little bit further, but the numbers just too many for Chromaspace. Down goes point number 1, and some kills on the back end. We figured a lot of this Gore would start to hang on this Willow, and the mobility, I think, massive in that team fight.
Yeah, I mean, being able to get the Fae Flight, it's almost unfortunate. I think they win that fight harder if Willow is able to get the Fae Flight above 500 HP, right? Like, if you're at least over half of your health bar, then you're going to feel a lot more comfortable. But she was sitting there in that awkward moment of, I'm out of Grover range, I'm nowhere near my tanks, I can't really do anything here. I just got out alive, which is huge for them to just keep that stagger kill from happening. But now you can see maybe kind of coming back to them. They need to bait Mixalizub out of position, and it's already got him 1 kill. If now goes too far, that's another easy pickup for him. This payload's already halfway there.
That is a massive seismic crash that results in literally nothing for Mixalizub. Now the domino's starting to fall, and Enlightenment won't save your life this time now. Chromaspace continue to roll their way in. Uberspady is going to try to prevent himself from being staggered out here. Unfortunately, a little bit of damage will find the dismount here. You're a minute into this payload defense, and you're already wondering if you're Mixalizub, if you're going to be able to keep this one at bay.
I mean, they just used all their ults, right? You are super questioning whether or not you could do anything here. And I've never had you describe my casual games in one sentence faster than a huge seismic crash, but nothing comes up from it. That just feels like what Mixalizub are facing right now. A really good stun, really good setup, but they're the ones getting shredded. Wow.
I mean, this is brutal. This card's going to roll itself in sort of an anticlimactic fashion. One by one, Mixalizub have to march their way onto the payload, and in it goes. No real flash there at the end. Chromaspace just find themselves some individual picks, and that's all they need. And I think the KDAs here, Gore, tell a pretty good story of what's going on, where Coriol has been the only one who's kind of been picked on. Nepo's died once, and everyone else blank in the death column. Mixalizub just has not had the same level of control and lockdown that Chromaspace has.
I mean, when you look at it, Coriol and Nepo, like, they're the ones that should theoretically be dying the most on this team,
right?
Because they're the ones that should be diving the most on this team. Ethereal can work around the point, as well as Ovum should be hanging around there. But as long as Adium stays at 7-0 and 7, and that 0 hangs up in that column, then, you know, Coriol can be 0 and 9 for all I care. He's doing his job at that point, right? And I think that's exactly what Nepo is trying to do here as well, is just get that pressure away from the Willow and let it pop off, because it's controlling so much of that point.
We'll see if now Mixalizub, they have fast cap on their side. Can you turn this fight around? A Dread Serpent could be pivotal here, but unfortunately it's not going to be looking great right off the rip as Chromaspace have found an early kill onto Nax. So Leon, now you imagine this Willow is going to feel a little bit more comfortable to roll her way forward. Dread Serpent, nothing. Now you have to slither away, and with 10 HP he'll survive, but Coriol will run him down. Adium now turns around to kill as well. Look at the space that this Makoa is buying. Coriol's going to have to turn around, try to defend his back line, but it's a spite from Uberspady that'll end up getting the turtle. 93% from Chromaspace. I think they've got the body blocks here, Gormizer. They sure do, and Chromaspace take a commanding 3-0 lead.
I admire that fight from Mixalizub and where they're trying to take it, but the problem is, at least in my count, I saw 3 eyes, and 3 of them that were left alive after the first initial engagement. All of them were looking for side fights over here, statue side. None of them were looking towards the point until it was too late. I mean, Davosy tries to get in there, but as you had called it, the body blocks were already set up and ready. Now, yeah, Chromaspace dies a little bit. Maybe this payload isn't moving the way it would want to. Oh, wait, actually, it was moving there for the first 30 seconds. So you aren't even getting the full stop that you want out of it. They're spending credits at this point. It feels like Mixalizub, they just didn't get the fight they wanted, and unfortunately, it's actually coming back to bite them, winning right after the cap. I never think that's a really solid sign for a defense. It's what you can do here now that you have the advantage of space.
That's right. This is the best we've seen Mixalizub look so far this game. You're going to force a dome shield as well. Ethereal maybe could have held on to that one. It looks like he was going to go down sort of regardless there. Uberspady starting to hit his stride. This Xin was top of the damage charts at the midway point after the first 2 points. And now he's continuing that trend on in. Yeah, he's about 17,000 ahead of everyone else in this game. It's getting that Leon a little bit higher up, I think that Mixalizub will look to do. But Uberspady's at least been doing his job here. A 6 streak burning away on the Zip.
That Yomi strike, perfect for those little choke points. There's not a lot on Jag Falls where you're going to see 3 people line up, but when you get it, you absolutely love the feeling. The problem is, look how much ground they've given up. I mean, they haven't found much in return. Finally, a kill onto Nepo to slow things down, but I mean, it feels like Chromaspace were able to just kind of run back to the payload, finally having to pay for it.
But that was a lot. I mean, that was Dread Serpent and Assert Dominance spent there for Mixalizub. 45 seconds left. Not sure I see a world where both of those are ready in the next mid-fight. It seems, I say that because it seems like we're starting to roll our way towards a 3-1 mid-fight. That's probably a gamble that Chromaspace are okay taking. They have looked near infallible on the mids. It has not looked like Mixalizub has had any sort of footing on these mid-fights. A lot of it thanks to this Willow and this Buck sort of being left unchecked. So I think this is a world, if you're Chromaspace, you're just taking this time to build up the ultimate charge on that Whirlwind. Maybe not, though. It's a Fae Flight that gets used now for Chromaspace. Maybe trying to push the issue a little bit further. Luckily, that one charges somewhat quickly. So not a massive investment. But it will end up being a defense for Mixalizub, and we'll head on to a 4-1, I assume. here in just a moment. I assume.
Well, they're holding on to it. Yeah, there's a couple of choke points. Like I think it's safe to assume just because of the choke points that exist. But you know, I was actually thinking about this, and this is probably more mid-round if it happens, maybe into game.
I need
if
this.
It happens. But there's 3 ways to really win on a defense here. Right now the control's going. I mean, they use that fake flight. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, no.
That comes through. There's 3 ways to win a defense like that if you're Chromaspace, right? Or I guess offense, a push that comes through for the payload. The most obvious one is you get the payload conversion, right? As long as you get that point online, it doesn't really matter what you used, you got the point on the board. The second one is a little less common, but it's still something that you can feel the impact of, and it's how many ults did you get them to burn. I think if you're Chromaspace, you actually hurt yourself going into overtime there, because I see Dread Serpent and Assert Dominance both used very late in that round, didn't seem like they would recharge. They're both in the 70s now, so they're going to be able to charge those up, theoretically, on a long mid-fight, and they have comeback mechanics, so that should pay in their favor. And then the third way to win a push like that is obviously both. You get a lot of ults, and you get the point conversion. Feels really good. But for Chromaspace here, no Whirlwind, no Feyflight, no Dome Shield immediately available. They're coming into this one handicapped.
Yeah, Chromaspace. That might be the advantage that Mixalizub need to have an edge. It's a spite from Uber Spady to get an opening kill onto Coriol. This Barrack is low as well. He'll be able to rocket boots his way out to safety. This is the first time we've seen Mixalizub really in control of this point. It's been Chromaspace overrunning all of the choke points up to this point. This percentage is going to start to climb quickly as well. 4% per tick instead of the usual 3. Davazy will not crash down with the Assert Dominance. It's a Dread Serpent waiting around the wings if need be, but a Fade Flight will soar high above. Dread Serpent just buys a little bit of time for the front line, but how much time did it really buy? Now it's an Ancient Rage. The shell spin into the back line. Princess Pecha being swung away at. The hook will connect, but there's not enough damage just yet. In the meantime, Adium has gotten a high bounty kill onto Uber Spady. Nepo dives into the back line, grabs the kill onto the Maldamba as well. Nauk is still alive. It's his time to maybe turn around a big fight here, but it's Chromaspace that are still in position.
I mean, standing on the point, they're going to have control. There's an Assert Dominance, but a great Dome Shield. It's not going to hurt the Ashe, but it's going to keep anybody else from getting in there. This is the matchup, though. If that Willow goes down, and she does, that changes a lot here in favor of Chromaspace. It takes it away.
Wow. Looks like Mixalizub is actually going to end up winning this mid-fight, where it looked like Chromaspace were in perfect position. It was that second wave of ultimates that made the massive difference here. And I think that Whirlwind, remember, kind of a bit of a misplay maybe there towards the end of that offensive round from Chromaspace. Whirlwind came out and just now came back off of cooldown, so that wasn't in the mid. That would have been massive, I think, in turning something around. A seismic crash, the Dread Serpent at the end there from Mixalizub, I think made a big difference.
Now I think you get to see a lot that I think can pay off, right? When you have an ult at the beginning of the round, that's, let's say, just about 30%, maybe 20% off, right? Like, it's going to come up not in the initial engagement, but as a secondary round. That's what favors a lot of these teams and things like that. You didn't really get to use the Whirlwind on the side of Chromaspace when it came up, and so you didn't have that second win the same way Mixalizub did. Unfortunately for Mixalizub, it doesn't seem like they're going very far as of right now, but then again, we saw what happened last time. So maybe they just need to find a good breaking point. Makoa seems to be the one that they can pick on the most. Granted, also one of the hardest ones to lock down. That could be their way into this. You kill the Makoa, forces everybody else back, and then you can find some easy lockdown to maybe stagger out the Barrack, the Buck, the Grover, and find a conversion.
There's the Whirlwind that maybe Chromaspace were hoping was on the previous mid, but instead it's going to buy some time now. A double kill from Nepo. It's going to look to be converted into something a little bit further, but Princess Pecha tosses up a nice wall, delays any further stagger. This is the pushback Chromaspace are looking for. Nice hook there from Coriol. I think we've seen some highs and lows from this Makoa throughout this game, Gore. Some Ancient Rages that have really turned around some team fights. Sometimes, though, it maybe hasn't quite hit the mark that Coriol had been hoping for.
Yeah, I think so far, I mean, Coriol has been just hit or miss, right? It's been so off-putting to see this Makoa, especially because he's been so highly valued the last couple of weeks. I think when we saw it on Clown Fiesta, there were a lot of on and off moments. I think throughout that entire set for the Makoa. And I'm not really sold on his high priority as of yet. I think that hook is still really, really good, and moments like that, you get rid of Davazy, right? It feels great, especially in the Assert Dominance. You can pluck Davazy out of it. So far, it's been just inconsistent enough, and so far pretty easily punished enough. He might push him down a little bit further, although it's hard to argue against plays like that.
Will Ethereal stay alive? The answer for the time being is no, but Princess Pecha, in chasing down that kill, would not stay in range of the carts. We head on to a 3-2 mid-fight here. Here's a look at your KDAs. Davazy, 5 and 10, tough there. 6 and 7, so sort of where we figured this Makoa would be. But it's been kind of the consistent rise of this Leon damage that has made, I think, a massive difference in this one, Gord. Nauk is 7 and 10, not all that attractive for a damage dealer's KDA. But remember, Nauk was, what, 4th, 5th, maybe even at one point in those damage charts through the first couple of rounds. It seems like sort of the resurgence of this Leon has made a big difference for Mixalizub.
Yeah, I think that is easily going to be one of the most impactful things that has changed. A lot of this lockdown that's coming down specifically onto like Adium, but getting to Ovum, getting to Coriel and Nepo as well on a lot of these trades. I think the one that really changed it was when Lars went down in the last fight, you lose this Maldamba, but then all of a sudden Leon turns around 2 kills off the back of it. That's exactly what you need to see. Fortunately, this isn't off to the best start so far, but it's a 1-for-1 trade. Now 2-for-1 in favor of Mixalizub.
Well, there you go. When we talk about how Leon can counter out a Willow, that's exactly why right there. One volley of abilities, and now will shut down one of the most important members of the Chromaspace lineup. Princess Pecha avoids the hook. It's still very low around to the side. Uber Spady snags the kill on Coriel. Could be looking at another capture here for Mixalizub. Seismic Crash sent off to the side. Ethereal will get stunned down, but luckily out of range of any further damage. Mixalizub, though, still holding down the right amount of space here. And at 75% in good position, especially if the kills start to roll the way they are now. There's a Whirlwind on the back line from Chromaspace. That'll buy you a little bit of time, but the Dread Serpent buys some peel at the end, and Mixalizub take their 3rd point.
Just keeping things close as long as they can. Jack Falls is anyone's game still. Coriel with 2 kills at the very end. It feels like everyone's staggered pretty hard here. So Mixalizub are going to be off to a very slow start. And this is maybe one of the more difficult things. I said this earlier. This isn't a really indicative win for Chromaspace. I mean, yeah, cool. You stop them from getting the payload push. They spend some of the credits they just earned. Theoretically, they come back more powerful. But if you can get a solid grip on this choke point and kind of use it as the inverse of a push, right, you're using this as a defensive zone and keep them locked down on the side of Mixalizub. They have trouble getting back to the payload just to begin with, but pushing it doesn't seem to be the issue. I see a payload that's moving forward right now, with a couple of eyes having to turn back just to look at it.
I can't believe we're looking at this here. Through the first couple of minutes of this game, it looked like Chromaspace were in a commanding position to end this game. Remember, Chromaspace were up 3-0. Chromaspace were up 3-0, 1 push away from taking this game 4-0. Mixalizub defended there, now has captured a couple of mids in a row, and it's looking even worse. Chromaspace completely swept from the map, and only Princess Pecha's the one who goes down. This cart is going to get dangerously close, especially if Davazy can find some dismounts.
Yeah, you need not only dismounts, but just zones. Make them feel uncomfortable coming out of the base. Make them wonder whether or not they can do it. You have no Assert Dominance, you have no Dread Serpent, so nothing that, comes out in terms of peel around the payload. But you do have a Spite for a kill, and you have a Seismic Crash for some setup. I think there's a lot of potential here to try and find the lockdown you need to convert this. They might even be able to win off of this if they use their ults appropriately.
Ovum, important role to play here, especially with the timing of that Whirlwind. With 38 seconds left, it's got to be pin perfect. If you spend it here, you won't have it for the mid, even if you defend. But Mixalizub, they want to go now. He used the Whirlwind, counters out a lot of that Seismic Crash, especially with the Damba going down for Mixalizub on the back line. A hook in will put Princess Pecha in an awkward spot. Davazy ends up falling, but the Inara is still alive. Backing away now is Mixalizub. You needed to stay alive there, I think, if you're Princess Pecha. So there are 15 seconds left, and Chromaspace just need a little bit of zoning, and we'll go to one final mid.
Well, it's a dangerous game to play. You have to keep your eye on every angle because, especially with a Xin, a Spite and a Whirl gets you right back to that payload and gets it into overtime. Much like that, although that's the dash it's going to be, and that's going to cost him Uber Spade's life.
Yeah, Adium now with a double kill. One of the 2 frontliners is down. Big role to play here. If you're Nauk, around the wall, slide to the side, but Nepo will win this engagement. And it seems like a couple of the final lines of defense for Mixalizub starting to crumble here. A hook off to the side is going to send Lars back, and that will be the successful defense now from Chromaspace. So what a turnaround we've seen here in this game. 3 straight points for Chroma, 3 straight points for Mixalizub, and all will be settled in one final mid-fight.
A lot, though, of just riding on this one. 5 ults immediately available for Chromaspace. Ancient Rage and Dome Shield are more reactionary ults, so I don't expect to see those at the beginning. Davlazy, Princess Pecha are very, very close to getting their ults, but not having those at the beginning of the round. Something like a Seismic Crash to really set up a couple of kills to start staggering things in your favor is not the best way to start things off for them, especially when you factor in the fact that the last couple of ults or rounds have been won not just from really, really solid ults, but realistically a little bit of comeback mechanic in there. This is on equal footing. Any advantage Chromaspace get is going to have to be met with the equal amount of time from Mixalizub.
Yep. You're going to need a good Faith Light here as well, I think, if you're Adium. Remember, the last Faith Light got immediately deleted by Nauk mid-flight. So that's a big pivot point here. Both teams very cautious with their ultimates, but now it's Chromaspace who want to go. Uber Spady, no good on the spite. That one clips into the wall. The wall, though, now is going to lock in Coriol in the Ancient Rage. 1-for-1 trade. Davlazy down, Coriol is as well. Both off tanks back and respawning, but look at this flank from Uber Spady. Doesn't have the last bit of damage. Has to reload as the Willow flutters her way away. Where does that Dread Serpent go? Seemingly not into a fantastic spot as Chromaspace still standing strong. It is Ethereal dropping down the Dome Shield, and there's enough health missing that Mixalizub has started to take control of the mid and assert dominance. Up, down, Chromaspace try to leap away here, but Uber Spady, he's died off on the other flank. Davlazy is still in it, but there's Nauk with a flank of his own. Finds some big shots, checkerboarding in the kills, but it's Mixalizub on the point.
I mean, Nauk has been the game maker. Now with a good ult, not going to be able to find the kill. Gets Coriol low, though, sets up his team.
Whoa. I can't believe that. Mixalizub, despite losing in the kill department through some of that, able to stand strong on point number 7. 3 straight points for Chromaspace. 3 straight points for Chroma. And Mixalizub are able to stand strong on a few of the defenses and win the final mid-fight there. Gore, there's a massive turnaround in this game where I think the Leon was mitigated early. Things were not looking great for Mixalizub, and it's still negative for Nauk, but I think that shows a clear picture of how the Leon caught up. I think Uber Spady had a great game there as well. So a big turnaround down the stretch.
I think you can see how oppressive the damage dealers for Chromaspace were. I mean, 21 and 13, 21 and 10. And they obviously were having a really great time, and I think the healing numbers will show Ovim did a good job too. I think it's just the fact that, in my eyes, when you have an Inara, you have an Ashe, I think it's a little more solid than a Barrack Makoa altogether. Although, like you said, early on, it definitely seemed to be hitting its stride. And then now, as you had highlighted, just jumps into the fight. There were a lot of moments where things weren't going that well. They were, you know, like you said, 3rd, 4th, 5th on the damage charts, and then slowly rose up to the occasion past Uber's Payday, who had been the first in the first 2 rounds, and just showcased how much damage and how important an Inara, a Leon, can be into the middle of a comp. I think they just paired well together, started finding the counter matchups, and made it unfortunately difficult for Chromaspace here, and they don't get themselves the 3-0 at the very minimum that they really would have wanted coming into this.
That's a good point. That has plus-minus implications as far as standings go. Really in that final fight as well, Nauk had a nice flank that kind of corralled Chromaspace into a spot that they were somewhat uncomfortable with. Yeah, that was the big streak that this Sin went on. It was a full-blown 7 streak at one point. Gave Mixalizub a massive edge. And, you know, I think this is the type of game where the frontliners are kind of those unsung heroes where, you know, low kills, high deaths for both of the frontliners for Mixalizub. But we saw why you draft an Ashe and an Inara together, I think. The assert dominances, the seismic crashes, fantastic at buying space for those backliners.
And it did such a wonderful job for them there that I imagine, I mean, if you're going to be first pick, I theoretically am going to see it swap. I can't imagine Chromaspace taking second pick on either on their own map. So assuming the first one's Mixalizub's, Chromaspace should be first here. And I can't imagine letting them get Inara Ashe again. If I were Mixalizub, though, and it gets through, let's say, that first pick and they're not banned, I'm going to grab them both in the first phase. Like, who cares about DPS? There's plenty of those, a dime a dozen. Grab me the Inara Ashe for those top 2, then we'll get a good healer next run around, and we'll be happy with that.
Especially on Stone Keep. I mean, Stone Keep is the place where I think those 2 frontliners would just run amok if you're able to get both of them on your side. We will at least not be seeing the Ashe here as Chromaspace has taken her away. Torvald as well now is off the board. We started to see sort of this rise of the Torvald comps again for a while there, Gore. Torvald was just not really being considered, but now I think teams have really started to see what damage he can do when paired with somebody who's able to apply that damage on a pretty consistent basis. Corvus gone, Genos open, and that means the one Mark healer left available would be locked in.
Trespass and are
Yeah, I think Torvald ban, you're kind of going and trying to do mental balances in your brain. What's more worthwhile, Genos versus Torvald? If we ban Genos, they could still go for a Torvald comp that works pretty well. It might not have the same damage amp as Torvald plus Genos, but it still would have good healing behind it. And because Ashe was already banned, take out something that you know is going to be potent and just let them have it. Genos is something that people, even though he's very strong and can be very helpful, they've been dealing with it for years. I mean, last year all PPL people were playing Genos, and he got dealt with in those moments as well. So I think he's a first pick, he's a solid pick, but he is something that can be, maybe not countered is the right term for it, but dealt with and controlled is the better way to look at it.
How about this? Ruckus with the second pick from Chromaspace. Not all that wild. I mean, hovering right around that 70, 80-something% mark as far as total pick ban goes, right around the 50% mark in the win-loss column. So not this big groundbreaking pick, but definitely interesting to see Ruckus prioritized so highly. Chromaspace are going to pair that pick with a Xin now, though. So you get a little bit of mobility, Gore, added into your draft now if you're Chromaspace. So we've started to see this rise and how important the ability to shift these fights kind of on a dime is, and I suppose you have that with the Ruckus and the Xin.
You are nothing but dust.
Now, the thing that's crazy to me is picking the Ruckus into the Cassie. I mean, that's one of those old matchups that realistically should go Cassie's way. We've seen a lot of it. I've mentioned this a ton of times the last few weeks. Every time I've mentioned it, though, it's something that you have to go Wrecker if you're Cassie. You have to invest in that. With Shaolin, maybe you have somebody else that's going to have the cauterize to come through and deal with the Genos healing. But if you don't go for the Wrecker, you don't get the counter. Like, the whole point is that Big Game helps you deal with his health bar. Big Game plus Wrecker shreds the shield, shreds the tank thereafter, and that's kind of the combo you need if you're Cassie. And it's weird because it feels like Cassie's been on the rise in Europe. Ruckus was actually on the fall in Europe. I mean, somebody that was getting banned every game, first picked when he was available, just kind of disappeared. Now he comes up, what, 4th overall in this draft. I think there's a lot of counter play that can come into it, but we've seen even in those matchups, go back to players, look at people like Rubu who have played it into that matchup and still found success. I think Chromaspace still have a lot of weight behind them, being able to give them a good punch back towards Mixalizub.
And now there's another shield that Chromaspace is going to be looking to deal with, or that Mixalizub, rather, is going to be looking to deal with as well. The Fernando shield comes into play with the 5th and final pick now for Chromaspace. Gore, it got even more mobile after the Ruckus and the Xin were picked up there. Now there's a Kinessa that can shift some of this fight around if Chromaspace feel awkward in one position or another. Do you think Mixalizub have the tools to chase some of that down, find some of that damage to keep up with Chromaspace, who admittedly are going to be maneuvering a lot?
Yeah, the damage, I think, is going to be there. And I think Cassie, Shaolin, really good at, like, quote-unquote, anti-flank. So people that are very mobile, they can both be really solid at locking down someone like Xin and Ruckus, along with this Maeve who can go through shields. So Ruckus in danger there, Fernando in danger there with that pounce being able to come through, especially if she goes for the execute as opposed to bonus damage on the daggers, right? If you have that execute threshold that comes through, Fernando's no longer safe, Ruckus no longer safe. And that could help maybe equal the playing field when it comes down to it, but it also lessens the damage you're doing against, say, Genos, Kinessa, and the Xin. So we'll have to keep our eyes on Maeve going into this. But Shaolin, as well as Cassie, a really good kind of standard and tried and true duo that's going to come through, I think is a solid matchup. I'm just a little worried. I think Inara, especially with the Moldamba behind her, is going to be a great single tank. There's just a lot of damage on the other side that she is going to be taking, so this is going to be Moldamba's time to shine.
Hey, let's jump in. Game number 2 between Chromaspace and Mixalizub. Starting off now, Mixalizub, what a turnaround there on Jaguar Falls. If you're just joining us, as a reminder, Chromaspace was up 3-0, and then Mixalizub won 4 straight points to win it on Jag Falls. Now in a not commanding just yet, but very strong position here in our first set of the day in the PPC. Mixalizub and the Sonar are going to make their way onto the point first. Matched, though, and I imagine that we see a lot of this by the Fernando. And the shielding of the Ruckus already effectively deleted, but that's not who we're concerned about at the moment. It's Adium on the Xin. We saw a big Xin game previously from Mixalizub on Jag Falls. Now it's Adium's chance to show that he can do it as well. Nepo playing the barrel stuff style of Kinessa will run down Nauk again. Now it's Chromaspace's time to jump down on the point, start to build up some percentage of their own.
Well, they're going to be able to get rid of the Sonara. Good grip from the Genos as well. Ovum on top of things here in support to make sure that gets locked down. If this Maeve is able to run rampant, I mean, we've seen what happens. Go back to some Alex footage at this point and watch what happens when Maeve is able to run around without any counter coming up to her. But because of the control that's coming through, Chromaspace aren't really breaking too much of a sweat. Losing Coriel is definitely a big punch. They still have the tanks.
Well, Gore, this is where this game and this fight can really be flipped on their head. Nepo, from range, snags a double kill, and that's going to put Mixalizub at a bit of an Umber's disadvantage, make it 3 all of a sudden for Nepo, as some of the damage in the back will get tossed out there. Up on the high ground, this is who you need to deal with, though. You got to get rid of the Inara, and they're able to do so. Chromaspace definitely in dominant position. They will likely take point number 1. You know you can never call things too soon here, especially with how game 1 went, but Chromaspace, they'll be pushing for their second.
Yeah, for a team that dominated 3 points in a row and then just had maybe one slip up on a defense, that was a long loss that they had to endure, which is maybe one of those things, you know, we don't get to talk about it, but like endurance is something, in a best of 5 maybe it doesn't come through as often, although it is still a pretty lengthy set. But realistically for these guys, I mean you have to think about a tilt factor at the very beginning there, right? I mean, I am upset if I am dominating that game and then I end up losing it there the way that Chromaspace did.
Sure.
And so I think so far a good bounce back, but like you said, you can't count it out, and that's something that plays with you, right? Like not just us, we say that because it's riding on our minds. The players have that too. I mean, Chromaspace are going to be looking at this. You need some confidence. You're up 1-0, but that means nothing, especially because this payload's not going anywhere yet.
Yeah, it is stuck exactly where it's at. Not only does Nauk stay alive thanks to his ultimate, he's now stayed alive long enough to get a kill onto Nepo. Killing that Kinessa so important for Mixalizub, and things are just going to get worse, it seems, for Chromaspace, as they're going to get pushed back here. The respawns are out, so it's about cauterizing some of those wounds, to turn a bit of a phrase there. One more shot, he reads the slither, Nepo gets it, so that's an opening now for Chromaspace to start to work back in, but we've seen this time and time again as well. Nauk has been calling the bluff, but Nepo, unswayed, will move his way in and get the 1v1 against Nauk. Suddenly this payload starting to inch its way up just a little bit further. Mixalizub constantly losing one guy here, one guy there, but this is the most difficult choke point yet we're starting to approach.
I mean, didn't even hesitate to go in there, was looking at it, almost had the counterplay for the Shaolin, but I think that's the glory of Kinessa, something that Strix can't quite bring in a scenario like that, although I guess that pistol is pretty solid. But it's that just AR nature of the rifle that can come through. In a close quarters lockdown like that, you just go ahead and lock the Shaolin in a corner. You're going to be perfectly fine. It's also, this is a kind of side tangent, but really, really solid with Headhunter if you combine it. A good chunk of damage can help eat through tanks. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Nepo maybe throw that out once or twice, although the Headhunter definitely would pay off with the way that he's hitting these shots.
Man, how important has Nauk been in keeping Mixalizub safe on the defensive end? He's got double-digit HP, though. He'll survive. 10 seconds left, no Coriel. Things looking dire all of a sudden for Chromaspace. A couple of ultimates will be ready to go, or not ready to go, rather, for both of these teams, but it's looking like a good, or Mixalizub, rather, defense for the time being. So, not quite the same snowball we saw early on from Chromaspace in Game 1. But they still had pretty dominant control after a few moments in that mid-fight, and Gore, a lot of that hinges on Nepo and his ability to position himself for a few kills.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised to see this be 1-1, considering how skewed it feels like the slash lines are. I guess it's just because Nepo's 8-3-3 that I'm leaning really hard in favor of Chromaspace. That's a very, very good performance so far. But Adium was 7-0-7 last game, and things turned around. Again, it's just kind of like you touched a stove, and it left a big burn. You're timid to go back and do anything with it again now, as well as Uber's Payday, not having necessarily loud games, but we saw how that transitioned throughout all of last game. Uber's Payday had a pretty solid, well, let's say round 1 and 2, so this might be the time for the Cassie to pop off, but now he's essential. You had called it, but if now just has a good round, that could be the win for Mixalizub.
Well, there you go. There's your 1v1 that you're looking towards. Both the Kinessa and the Shaolin eat about half their HP. Have to work their way back onto safety. Heat Haze is used here. Midnight, though, flies out. Double snipe from Ovum. That's going to give Chromaspace big advantage now in this fight. How far can you push it? Far is the answer. Nepo will finally grab one. But what a turnaround here from Chromaspace. They were on the back foot. All of the positioning was for Mixalizub, and sometimes all it takes is your support hitting a big ult.
Man, and that's one of those things, like, you can factor everything into the game. You just cannot, when you go into a round, say, okay, but when this guy, if this guy gets a double kill off of his ult, it's going to change everything. I mean, Chromaspace are losing up to that point. It feels like you have Mixalizub in control, but now you get a one-for-one trade. Yes, Ovum's not around, but as long as Nepo's alive, you've got their damage online. You're at 99%. Yep. You technically still have an additional person on your team fighting in that form of the point. You cannot leave it if you're Mixalizub, and that puts him at a disadvantage.
Nepo being dove now by Nauk. This is an important trade. Even more so important is that Corio falls. Nauk does as well, though. Silver lining for Chromaspace. It's going to get worse. Nepo gets the kill onto Uber Spady. Now it's all down to Maeve to provide the damage for Mixalizub and keep them in this mid-fight. Princess Pecha pushed back. Void gripped up. Ethereal kills him down. Chromaspace looking great for their second point of the game. And they've got a slight stagger in here, Gore, so they're going to get this payload marching.
You know it's never a good sign when you say it's all up to insert champion here, and I have to scan for where they are. Like, I just can't find them on the map anywhere. That's how you know you're losing a lot of grip. There's not a lot of turnaround potential there. Maeve ends up dying anyway, so Chromaspace now leading control. And this is something we don't get to talk about too often. Even if this ties up, even if Mixalizub hold here, or if it goes 3-1, either way, Chromaspace, having got both mids, have a lot of credits now in their favor. Any death for them at this point is a little bit more itemization they're going to be able to bring to the round, just because the economy is shifting in their favor this time around. And so that could cause Mixalizub a lot of trouble. But again, it didn't hurt him last time.
Uh-oh, this Dread Serpent feels like a last-ditch effort. Uber Spady flanks around the back and gets the snipe onto Ovum. That's actually very important here. So while the respawns are coming in from Mixalizub, Chromaspace won't have healing for just a little bit longer. You have to look at the timer, though. 1.5 minutes left. And not a lot of ground to cover. This is where Chromaspace want to be. They're feeling comfortable. They've got nearly all of their ultimates ready to go. It's a scout that gets used now. Mixalizub early, seemingly in this defense, starting to throw something at the wall. And Midnight now is going to get used as well, and Davazy won't find a kill in the backline. It's Chromaspace still with their foot on the gas, still the ones finding these picks, but Mixalizub has that defender's advantage. Can he do it again? Not this time. Ovum just wide with the ultimate, but look at the follow-up now from Coriol up on the high ground. He goes, Hexafire, what do you got for me? Nauk with one, Ethereal with one, Coriol with none. Davazy, he'll snag a couple of kills, or a kill rather, off of the respawn. Very gritty, very close-knit in a lot of these fights, Score, but that tends to benefit the defense.
Yeah, always benefits the defense, especially right here. I mean, this courtyard, it's nice and open, and, you know, you look at it, that payload's just inches away from being converted. But it's also the most difficult payload to stand on and feel comfortable with. Even with a massive shield here for Fernando, it's so difficult to stand there and withstand just the damage that is going to be input from him. I mean, you get Cassie free firing, Shaolin free firing, both from the high ground. You don't have a lot of opportunity to get up there and steal it away either. It's up to this Zen, it's up to this Ruckus to try and get rid of him. They do get rid of now.
Uh-oh, Nepo with two. And look at who those kills are on. Uber Spady, that one's important, of course, but the solo tank and Princess Pecha was the second one to fall down. Chromaspace, a bit of a brute force effort there. Here's your snipe in the mid. Just catches the toes of a couple members of Mixalizub there. Ovum definitely playing a big role, but Gore, it's hard to look anywhere else other than the 94,000 damage that Nepo has put on the board and the 15-3-5 slash line. I think that really tells most of what we're looking for here.
And I think you look at the end of the round last time as well, and who's getting the kills that matter the most? It's Nepo. He gets rid of Now and Uber. And once those two are gone, it's pretty easy to just push in the rest of the payload. I think this Kinessa and last game we saw is kind of the similar performance of that Leon, making the big difference, making those big plays, and making the changes that are necessary. Still has the Headhunter as well, and so if Anar is last man standing, that's an easy kill.
Well, it's Nepo who's done an absurd amount of damage in a short game, 11 minutes in. And now can maybe be the one to push Chromaspace over the finish line. Of course, he's going to hit that shot onto Davzy. He'll drop down. Headshot onto Pecha. One more, but it's Adium now who gets the kill this time. It's a Dread Serpent into the back. Look at Uber Spady, though, matching a lot of the damage that Nepo has done, so it's not all said and done just yet from Chromaspace. Ethereal is going to continually build up on some of that point presence. Princess Pecha not alive to be there on that. Anara, Uber Spady, though, suddenly turning on the Jets. 3 kills in this mid-fight gives Mixalizub a chance.
I mean, they're going to be hanging on to it. That comeback mechanics working so well for him, too. 78% and still rising. Real's going to have to touch down. They're going to have to do a lot to make sure this stays in their favor, and that is not it.
No, it sure isn't. Princess Pecha gets one, but Nepo with the other. Overtime is on. Now's the time for Chromaspace, but Nauk has something to say about it. Into the back line. Mixalizub standing strong with Princess Pecha. Can Coriel finish off the kill on Nauk? He sure can't. Princess Pecha will finally get that one. Overtime starting to work its way on down, but Ethereal back, full HP in. Snags one onto Nauk. This one's going to come down to the wire. Chromaspace fully playing catch-up here. Uber Spadey's still alive, but Ethereal is not. Overtime melting down so quickly. The odds diminishing. Ovim just shy on the through time and space. This time, Overtime desperately wants to expire here and give Chromaspace a chance, but instead it's Mixalizub who likely stands strong at the end, and they'll get their second point.
Holy, I mean, Chromaspace, they get points just for keeping overtime going that long, right? I mean, there's no way that you're supposed to win that fight, but they tried. It felt like there were a couple of moments, too, that they were going to be successful. Unfortunately, Mixalizub were just able to find those perfect moments, good angles, and a lot of control that comes down from this Inara Maldamba combo. But this is a good way to start your defense. You get a couple of kills, you keep them zoned back. You're just looking for ult charges at this point. Your time and space is at 25%, so it's got a little while to go. The rest of them holding on to it. I mean, you're still at the position right now. Ruckus is in. If you need to, you can use a Spite pretty early or a Hexafire pretty early in the round here. You know, ideally before, let's say, a minute 15, and you'll be able to charge them back. But otherwise, Immortal, Headhunter, must-haves going into the next round. Because no matter what, you got to have one more mid fight, right? Even if this is converted, you have one more mid that you're pretty comfortable with going into.
Oh. You could feel that Coriel wanted to use his Hexafire there, but a brilliant Dread Serpent is going to lock Chromaspace right in place. Adium, though, he's rejoined the fray to the tune of a double kill. One swing away from three, but Uber Spady has something to say about it. Somehow it's Mixalizub core that are still on the front foot here. Ovim will barely stay alive. I wonder if Princess Pecha can chase this kill down. Sure can't, as Nepo is back and respawning. So that's where the defender's advantage really comes into play. Chromaspace were fully on the back foot there, but quicker to reinforce gave them a chance to get back onto the payload. This has been right where Chromaspace wants to battle, and looks like that's where the fight is going to occur once again as Midnight gets dropped by Mixalizub, but times out with not much to say for it. Coriel bursted down, dashes away, and stays alive for the time being.
I mean, just being able to keep things moving, it would be big for Mixalizub, but it feels like at this point momentum's kind of shifted away from them. This is good for Chromaspace. Again, ult's charging up. The only person that is only at halfway, but I see it going up chunks every time he hits a shot, is going to be Adium. I'm not too worried about them controlling this for the next 20 seconds.
No.
The downside is, Dave, is this is following a very precariously close path to Jag Falls, and that seems to favor Mixalizub. I mean, looking over towards them, no Midnight going into what could be a final round of Seismic Crash, no Dread Serpent. Very similar to a couple of those rounds that we had in Jag Falls, and yet having those ults staggered out actually ended up helping them. We'll see if they can do anything with it here, or if it's all going to come down to the next one.
Look how low Princess Pecha is here. Chromaspace not with the angle to convert the kill, but with overtime on, things looking iffy. But now you've gotten a kill onto Ovim, so not all said and done just yet. Chromaspace are able to pull back just a few kills, the important ones definitely starting to roll in their favor. Princess Pecha, last one alive, but Mixalizub right back in reinforcing their front line in a timely manner. Can Adium hit the final shot? The Whirl will get it done this time, but yet again it's the Maldamba in the kill column. But finally, once Pecha goes down, that'll spell the end to this payload push for Mixalizub. No real ultimates invested by either side there. It's just a Midnight waiting to be charged up for Mixalizub. But Chromaspace yet again, Gore, I agree. I mean, this is a worrying trend, I think, that now in consecutive games you've gone up 2 or 3 points pretty early on and just haven't been able to seal things out. I think you have to lean right back on Nepo, right back on Ethereal to have a big mid.
Yeah, I mean, 20-7, very difficult to overlook what this Kness has been able to do for the game, but I'm feeling it. I mean, this is one of those points. You get this mid fight, that's great for you, but Mixalizub can grab and convert and still win the game here. You're not as comfortable as you are last round. Last round, even with a conversion, you're not out of it yet. You have a little bit of a comfort pillow now. There's a lot of threat onto you. If now and Uber have a good round and Nepo doesn't, then that could be the tides that really need to shift in order to give Mixalizub the dub.
There's a Seismic Crash up to the high ground. Ethereal dashes away. There's a Dread Serpent there as well. Nepo Big opening kill. Ovim there looking to line up another massive through time and space, but it's a double from Nepo on the mid fight. How many times has this guy done this game? How many times is he going to get away with it without an answer from Mixalizub? A Void Grip keeps Uber Spady right where he's at, but nobody's got the damage to get the kill just yet. Mixalizub still survive. Core, they got 75%. I'm holding here. I wonder if Ovim is going to use it. You got to have a little bit of information that they're there. I mean, this is perfect timing if Ovin can let this one fly, but he's going to hold on just a little bit longer.
That's one of those times us being able to see through walls is a little helpful for us. We target that no problem. Ovim doesn't get that luxury, and without anybody getting that aggressive on his team, I don't think they had the comms to really signify that 4 of them were stacked up there. And it doesn't seem to matter. They're still getting the kills they need.
Oh, that's got to be this game now. Chromaspace, maybe just a through time and space to seal the deal. But with no Princess Pecha, things not looking great. Overtime expires. Chromaspace looking fantastic now to take their first game of the series. And maybe you're just going to get a small stagger here from Mixalizub. Have something to say about it down the stretch. A double kill from Adium will maybe seal things up here. An Immortal from Ethereal will keep this game going just a little bit longer. Princess Pecha, the thorn in the side of Chromaspace. A Spike connects. Watch out, though. Now has made his way right back in. The 1v1 for the game that will go Chromaspace's way. And this set is tied. Yeah, look at the toes, right on the edge there of getting back onto that point. Gore, that's a win for Chromaspace, but we're still dancing that line, and it's not looking all that convincing on how they wanted to.
And even there at the end, like, I don't think it goes on much longer, but if now is maybe a step to the right, all of a sudden I think there's something else going. We're still in overtime. Maybe a kill comes through. Maybe they just fall in. It's an extra second of gameplay that we get to see, right? But either way, I like what they had as a plan. And again, the draft from Mixalizub, I think, had a lot going into it. But you can see maybe where it started to falter. Davozy didn't really get a lot of damage done, less than the Inara even was able to put out, and that might have hurt them a little bit. And you also had to say 153,000 damage from Nepo, plus that slash line was kind of devastating and really hurt you. I think between Nepo and Adium, they just both had a good performance, and that's difficult to overcome, no matter how well you play on the other side.
Yeah, a few kills. I mean, look, you line them up, zip, zap, zop, things going in your favor consistently throughout these fights. You get a couple kills, whether it's through an ultimate from your support or just through good old-fashioned headshots from your sniper. It's going to be hard to argue, and you know, we're giving obviously Chromaspace a bit of a hard time because game 1 slipped out of their fingers. Looked like maybe this one would as well, but they definitely looked more comfortable on the mid fights here this game. Didn't necessarily falter down the stretch where in game 1 Mixalizub really took control of the way the pace of that game was being played. We have not seen, I'm trying to think now, really looking at this one, we've only seen 1 or 2 successful conversions here in this game. Gore, this is maybe looking like one, in this set rather, this is looking like one. We could be destined for a lot of mid-fights and a lot of contested games.
I mean, they went 3-2 last time, and I'm pretty sure they were lengthy games at that, so it's not too surprising, I think, to see them holding up to each other. I was kind of enamored. I mean, you take that, maybe you try to strip our audio away from there, but you've got yourself some good old classic montage material there on this Kinessa highlights. I mean, that's going to be solid for you. I can hear the dubstep and hit markers, air horns, all of it now that comes through. Maybe somebody will do it. Maybe somebody won't. But yeah, like you said, Splitstone Quarry, a bigger map. But look, I'm going to tell you, if I just saw Nepo on Stone Keep with that kind of Kinessa play, I'm banning Kinessa. I do not want her to get through. I think that is devastating to have happen to you here because she's just so much better.
She sure is. And at this point, I think if you're looking at Splitstone, the question used to be if you're going to give over Strix or the Kinessa. Thank you, I'm speaking now, if you wouldn't mind. If you're going to give over the Strix or the Kinessa, do you need to take one or the other for yourself? The answer now has really been a lot of... Yeah? You got something
That's actually really solid analysis.
I think so, look. Is that a yawn? Is that a cry? I'm not sure. It's one of the two. But at any rate, I'm saying that teams are usually crying if they can't get Strix or Kinessa, but it's really been the Kinessa show here as of late where Strix kind of has gone by the wayside. Both available. All right, go down and choose something. It's really been the Kinessa show here as of late where teams will be okay just getting the Kinessa, but there are enough other follow-ups as far as range damage, whether it's whether it's Victor, whether it's Leon, that kind of fill that sniper gap. But I think Kinessa, if you're looking towards snipers on this map, she might be the one to have because of some of that mobility.
Yeah, I think the ability to close the gap between the high ground, low ground, jump around. I mean, we've seen it in the past, but some snipers, when you get aggressive, you'll jump onto the bleachers. Like, you will get on top of those. There is no cover for you, but that's how certain you are of your victory. Granted, with the way this game has been going, maybe you're not feeling as comfortable and confident doing that. I actually think it's interesting. Strix has been a very big pickup on this map and just in general this year as well. And so far, both snipers kind of fallen to the wayside. Buck, Eevee, 2 flanks on a map like Splitstone Quarry is a very distinct advantage, I think, for Chromaspace.
It sure is, especially when we're talking about backline and the ability for that backline to stay alive. Sometimes the answer isn't even so much draft range damage of your own. It's hyper draft mobility and dive to just completely eviscerate the backline of the other team. A little bit of that now with the Ashe. Remember, this is something took a while to wind up in Game 1 for Mixalizub, the Ashe and Inara combination, but it is something that by the late game really was working in Mixalizub's favor. You gotta love the Ashe Inara stack. I think it worked fantastically in Game 1, might here. Gore, take a look at where we are in the healer discussion, though. Both Corvus and Genos taken away, and it's Ying that is going to be the first healer locked in.
I mean, being able to come through, I think Ying on maps like this, look, global healing, specifically in her ult, it's going to be solid. It's great for you to know, specifically for Eevee and Buck, when your ult is available, you're not sweating trying to get into a position to get those guys. They can go into the back line, lose line of sight, and you're still confident in your ability to keep them healed up. Granted, that's not going to be there for the first round, so there is going to have to be some cautious play, I think, from Chromaspace initially, especially with a Bomb King Grover locked in here from Mixalizub. Look, I'm going to be honest, I fanboy a little bit over Bomb King because I love him so much, but I think this is a solid draft. Shaolin loses me a little bit, but all 4 of those other champions control this map so well that I think Shaolin should theoretically be able to kind of ride the wave alongside the rest of the team.
Right. Does kind of seem that way. A Ruckus final pick here for Chromaspace. Sigor, I mean, the question has to be now for Chromaspace, are you at all concerned about the strict hit scan damage from the backline of Chromaspace? I mean, they have point tank, and then they have dive. I mean, that is what this team is going to be able to do. They don't have anyone that wants to sit back and pour out damage. Do you think Chromaspace have an okay draft that can maybe win them Splitstone?
I think this Ruckus is kind of the linchpin for them, right? When it comes into it, a very good matchup that Ruckus should have into the Bomb King. It's very difficult to get the full kill you need to. Yeah, it's easy to stack the bombs on him, but homie has a shield and a couple thousand health that are very difficult to burn through. And so for BK, it might be a little more tough than he wants, especially against the dive. Shaolin's going to need to either play Protector, play back, and when it comes down to it, Ashe, this battering ram, the shield, this control, she's going to have to choose which of the carries she hangs around. My choice would be Bomb King, and keep him safe, whether it's through lockdown, shielding, what have you. Just make sure that if there's dive onto the Bomb King or onto whichever carry you choose, they're going to be able to get away from that dive and stay alive, because otherwise, I don't think either of those carries are going to survive too easily, especially not with Buck and Eevee on the other side.
Well, it's time for a tiebreaker. Game number 3. Nepo is going to do what we expect him to do. Jumps on into the back, but instead it's Mixalizub who have drawn first blood here, and I'm not convinced they won't get second blood. Nepo weaves a shot over the top of the shielding, but Uber Spady right on back in there to even up the scoreline. Enough space, though, from Chromaspace to build themselves a 48% advantage, but Mixalizub finally cashing in the checks on a few of those opening kills to start to pull back the percentage.
Just making sure it stays even, Dave. They want to make sure that the game not only goes long, but, I mean, keeps it as close as possible. Nobody has a distinct advantage here. I'm starting to look at ult charges, even though it's first round, because those can come into an impact on a point fight that goes like this. It's up to this Eevee, I think, right now. A couple of good shots finally finds Uber Spade, but they lose Nepo in the process. It's still a 1-for-1.
Sure is, but it's Mixalizub that have the distinct advantage as far as point control goes, and literally nobody from Chromaspace can get in range. You're thinking that maybe there's a fight starting to boil up on either side, but instead it just kind of fizzles out when Chromaspace can't get themselves in range. I suppose that's the threat, though, with a draft like this. It's a potential overextension early on there from Chromaspace, and they were never able to recover.
And now they just locked back. I mean, still taking a lot of damage. See, here's the thing. So you don't have the Genos boost for the BK. Eevee's still a squishy target. Maybe now instead of being able to two-shot her, you have to throw that third bomb. Granted, pretty difficult to get in the timing of a wormhole, but still a matchup that you win more often than not. I think that's the case for a lot of these. And now with a good He Haze, this could be the pressure Mixalizub need to keep this one rolling.
Yeah, it is difficult to push on Splitstone Quarry.
Or not.
Not if you're going to start to throw out some of your ultimates, though. Yeah, there's a little dive in the back line from Chromaspace that'll keep this cart exactly where it's at. I got to imagine, though, I don't know, I'm so hung up on this Chromaspace draft where it just feels like you're playing a game of chess where if all you want to do is dive in and then you die, then you're stuck on the back line when you respawn, your own back line, and then you got to find another way to dive back in. It's sort of this weird tug of war. It feels like you're almost playing with yourself. Mixalizub have been happy enough to answer that call time and time again here this game. Chromaspace do have some ultimate score, though. They might need them here on the defensive side. Hexafire, maybe an Immortal, maybe throw out that Buck Wild. Didn't see much from the Ice Storm just a moment ago, and instead it's Mixalizub starting to get that ball rolling and assert dominance. Lands onto Coriel. That'll set up a kill for Uber Spady, and the cart will continue to inch its way in.
Just being able to find your way around this last corner, that's the difficult one, I think, that comes through. Very wide open area, good high ground as you can see here that Adium's controlling, but there's a lot of ways and avenues on Splitstone Quarry to get up there, and if this BK can try to supplant himself into the back line, which so far it seems to be working out well, this could be a dangerous domino effect in favor of Mixalizub, and Uber Spade, or I should say Chromaspace as a whole, are going to be suffering here if Uber Spade can have a good game.
Uber Spady's going to have to drop down. He's kind of the last line of defense.
Oh, so close.
King of the double kills, grabs a double kill on the Buck here. Adium swoops on in to take away the third. With 10 seconds left, it's really all on Davazy here to maybe get an overtime reset, but he won't have the chance to do so. So, Splitstone defense strikes again. Chromaspace will be able to tie up this game after an early mid-fight win for Mixalizub. But Chromaspace a distinct advantage, Gore, in the ultimate department coming into this fight.
I mean, being able to find themselves, like you said, in control in at least one department. And that's enough for me, honestly, to start swaying me over inside of Chromaspace here. I'm looking at specifically Ying having her ult, and that is easily going to afford Coriel, Nepo, Adium, a lot of leniency in their dive, right? I mean, you go back there, what, last round? You look at Coriel dying first, Nepo barely being able to get anything done back there. A lot that goes wrong for Chromaspace on that initial dive. Now, do that again, but with 600 healing a second. Okay, it's a lot easier this time around. I think this is good for Chromaspace. King Bomb as well as the Seismic Crash, both very solid at turning games around. A good Heat Haze as well can. So far, we haven't seen enough of those. Lately, I've started to lose a little axe on the King Bombs because Bomb King hasn't been able to find a lot of purchase in some of these games.
Oh, man. Here's the double dive working out for Chromaspace. Adium picks up the first kill with Coriel not far behind. Chromaspace starting to build up some of that percentage. A Hexafire could seal the deal around the end here. These guys are so staggered out now at this point. Really becomes difficult for Mixalizub to find their way back into this mid, unless you're able to keep some of the other members of your team alive. Nauka's going to get run down. You got a Bomb King up on the high ground in the back line, kind of wreaking havoc onto Chromaspace. It's all about dismounts. It's all about body blocks now for Chromaspace to seal up their first mid-fight win of the game. Can you withstand the King Bomb? And Immortal will sure help out. It's a shoulder bash out and away from the Ash. Coriel dashes right back over by the fidget spinners. Nearly stays alive, but Uber Spady has the damage to get the kill. Overtime is going to melt away, but it's Mixalizub now who are on the point themselves. It looks like the King Bomb might have done its job, Gore, in buying some time.
99% though, it's Chromaspace being able to hold a little bit of control. A misstep coming down from Mixalizub gives them an opportunity to go in. Granted, you need a pretty big misstep at this point for Mixalizub. They just got 2 kills, they're staggered out. Nepo can't really do anything. Buck Wild available. I see a through line to the Grover. If you can get back there silently and quickly, you might be able to supplant something.
Overtime will be reset. Coriel, though, loses his life for it. And now Chromaspace at a numbers advantage is going to get worse. 5 versus 3 on this mid. Mixalizub again are going to turn around a losing mid-fight, grab a point for themselves, and get this payload moving. Gore, this has been the story since game 1. It was just in game 2, Chromaspace were able to kind of deal with it. Now Mixalizub are starting to assert their control over the mid-fights here on Splitstone Quarry.
Yeah, and this time around you don't get Chromaspace going up 3 points and then having some shaky play, right? The control doesn't seem to all be there. Mixalizub now with the 600 credit advantage due to capturing both mids again, even if it doesn't convert, that starts to give them enough control that things will start to pay their way forward for them. But even now, I'm looking at it, you're getting staggered out. This isn't the worst case scenario for you, especially if you pick up the Eevee, maybe even the Buck here on the tail end. Uberspady dying is not the end of the world for them because he's had such a solid performing game so far outside of that. King Bomb's at 92%, so your ult's almost charged as well. I mean, on top of that, you almost enjoy this little break. It takes a little while to get back on Splitstone, so maybe enjoy is the wrong term. But you get 5% timing to come back, and the payload's still moving. In fact, you just get to relax a little bit before jumping right back into the fray.
Illusory Rift for Chromaspace. So obviously Chromaspace on defense is doing a little bit of pressure right now. It's an early Illusory Rift, but will buy some time, will buy some space. 2 kills now for Chroma. Mixalizub, not much a leg to stand on throughout the remainder of this fight. Princess Pecha is just going to try to farm up some damage. Maybe some ultimate charge around the end of it as well, but there's still 1 minute left. Nice shot there from range. Yeah, what am I talking about? You don't need a backline damage dealer. If Buck, I suppose, is going to be able to hit those shots, Uberspady will end up falling here. So a small stagger doesn't really make all that much of a difference, but look at what's happening here, Gord. Davizzy been back on the payload this entire time. The card has gotten close, and suddenly that's brought chaos to the doorstep of the Chromaspace base. Coriel with the opening one. Uberspady back from respawn as well. Adium low, into the ice block he goes. Princess Pecha looking to finish off the kill, and it's Uberspady who does so. What a play from Davizzy. He sacrificed his life so the rest of his team could work their way in forward. Unfortunately, the space that was bought was not all that much.
Yeah, when you lose Tank Part 2 Electric Boogaloo, that's where things really start to fall apart. You just don't have the Inara, you don't have the health bars on everybody else. But I see Ashe back in the fight, assert dominance 3% from coming through. I mean, if Mixalizub, if you want this conversion, that's the combination you need to do so. Overtime's going to exist for you. Pecha's back on the point as well, or on the payload. And so getting around this corner, as difficult as it could be, is still in the books. You just might have to invest a couple of ults to get things.
So no Davizzy, but Mixalizub spend their Whirlwind. Adium will get an opening kill now, so things suddenly maybe looking good for Chromaspace on this defense. Now again, the ultimate won't have much of a leg to stand on, and as we would expect, Princess Pecha, the last line of defense here to keep this payload where it's at. Davizzy will rejoin the party though. He was killed off early on in this fight. Can you get a kill onto Ovim? That might make things interesting, but the shoulder bash away will kind of spell the end to it. These two teams, they love making me draw out these overtime periods. It won't end up meaning much as Chromaspace yet again will defend, and yet again we're going to an even mid.
Now, I'm just going to say, I don't understand the use of the Whirlwind and the Heat Haze at the end of the round there. If I'm using any ults, I think I want to throw out Seismic Crash, maybe. I'm willing to use the Assert Dominance alongside him. I think Whirlwind on its own could be a good use. But you're still trying to make it around the last corner. You don't really have the kills coming up in your favor. I don't know if those are the ults I throw out first. I think I'm trying to get some of the setups, get the kills on board, because once you establish the stagger, yes, there's defender's advantage, but they still have a pretty long respawn time right there to try and come out. I just think realistically, Mixalizub are now coming into this one a little hurt. I mean, they're missing some of their bigger ults, mainly in that Whirlwind, but also in that Heat Haze. And there's something to be said about how in Game 1, the stagger ults really paid off for them. I'm looking towards the dive and that Illusory Rift being able to pay off the dive here for Chromaspace. I think that's going to make it a very difficult mid for Mixalizub.
There's not this immediate dive from Chromaspace that we have seen in other mid-fights. Hexafire, that's one way to dive the back line, but Coriel only ended up able to get one kill, but he's going to be able to dive out alive. So Chromaspace, they are going to get the early advantage. We've seen them do this, though, time and time again. You got to look at the front lines for Mixalizub, both still alive until Nepo picks up the kill onto Princess Pecha. Suddenly, it does not look like Mixalizub is going to have that great of a chance at fighting their way back into the mid. These next few moments, very important. Now dismounted, a Buck Wild, but Wild rather, will seal up that kill. And it's her dominance, though. I think that one lands over near the point. It sure does. So that's Davizzy now that's contesting this overtime. Lars falls, no more healing. Double kill from Nepo. Chromaspace have finally solved the formula. And a triple kill from Buck seems to be it. Chromaspace take a 3-2 lead.
They maintain that Immortal. I mean, I'm looking at CC immunity, a 1,500 health threshold for the team, where you just don't die in general. I think that's going to be really solid. This looks like Chromaspace, Dave, in my mind, especially with how fast you're seeing Illusory Rift charge back up, already at 54%. Once you get around towards some of these choke points where things are really going to be hairy for them, That's the advantage. That's the go button. That was the equivalent to the Furia and Flame all last year. Is the one thing that helped balance a team on the other side out. I think that's giving Chromaspace the advantage when they need it over here, even if it comes with a couple of staggers in the process.
Man, it already seems, I mean, 30 seconds have gone off this push, but kind of get the vibe that we're headed for another 7-point mid-fight, huh? These two teams have been closely matched throughout all of the games we've seen here so far. Now, that's something to say for Mixalizub. You know, it's been a very tough phase for them. They've won that one game, but they still show up, and they're still grinding against these teams, trying to improve themselves, and they've shown improvement, I think, in some facets throughout the phase, so hats off to them. And they're taking it to Chromaspace here, a team that has a few more wins than they do, but as I say that, suddenly Chromaspace has found their footing yet again. It's all about payload movement at this point. This card is going to move slow, but Chromaspace were able to make up a lot of ground.
That's that Illusory Rift. It comes in at the right time. They still have Immortal. Every other ult for Chromaspace available as they move this forward. And you had mentioned it. It's just the payload movement right now, the mobility that it's going to have. It's hitting that last corner with 3 ults now available, thanks to that Ice Storm being just used. It means you still have a pretty good advantage coming through. A dive with a Hexafire, a dive with a Buck Wild at this point in the game can take out some of the carries and really just strip the defense of Mixalizub.
Davizy, half HP, and Assert Dominance will save his life. Not exactly where you want to use that one, but the Immortal answers back here from Chromaspace. King Bomb rolling on through. Looks like that one helped out with the kill on a Nepo. Davizy falls as well, though, so it's still a good position for Chromaspace. Hexafire from the high ground finds one onto Uber Spady, but all of these kills getting traded out. Nothing has been clean here. Mixalizub, they are still standing. They are still alive. It's Coriel, who's the only one left in this area. He will fall, but Gore, there's still 15 seconds left for Chromaspace to work back in, but that's looking unlikely.
Yeah, difficult to get in there where they want. I mean, Eevee could definitely go for a touch. I think Buck as well is able to close that gap. And watch this Eevee. Her mobility is the real key. Up and over the wall, sword to the payload. Should be able to then ice block down and buy that overtime. That's what she's going to be looking for, but can she get there? The answer is yes, but not well.
Yeah, not able to survive there. So yet again, between Mixalizub and Chromaspace, we are headed on to a late-game mid-fight. That'll be a big deciding factor. Nepo, 18-10. That's kind of a very Buck slash line, I suppose. You're doing a lot of killing, but you're doing a lot of dying in there on the back line. And Gore, I think if you look at the last mid-fight, Chromaspace felt good in the way that Nepo played, in the way that Adium played, because it was sort of this slow burn. They didn't just kind of throw their lives by the wayside. They waited for the right moment and then dove in, and it seemed to work out better.
Yeah, I think the patience from them definitely worked out, but they also had a lot of ults going into that, right? Illusory Rift to allow them to take it a little slow at the very beginning. You had the Hexafire ready to go into the backline. I mean, and you even highlighted it. Jumps into the backline, Coriel, uses it on 3 people, but he still only found 1 kill. Now he doesn't even have that potency. I think getting into the backline, while big, is maybe not the end-all be-all here for Chromaspace. Even though it's a dive comp, it doesn't seem like it's going to be as fruitful for them overall.
Nauk has been knocked out of the fight, not by death, but just by good old-fashioned damage. And as I mentioned, Nepo will finalize the first part of that equation. Now to jump on in, another checkerboard of kills. It's the front line and the healer of Mixalizub that are starting to do some of the damage now, right when they need it most. Can Chromaspace stay alive? Look at those health bars. That's the important metric to start to look at here, if they can withstand for a fully reinforced fight here down the stretch. Nepo restores, but the volley of damage from Nauk will force the Buck right back out. 200 HP, but the healing is there. Suddenly, Chromaspace, they're going to start to storm these gates. Uber Spady will end up falling down. No ultimates on the board, but there's an Illusory Rift. Could be the difference maker. That one gets popped. Chromaspace starting to work their way in. Seismic crashes. Nepo puts some damage into the back of Davizy. Princess Pecha still alive. There's a well-timed Immortal to give Chromaspace a fighting chance as Mixalizub have to run away. Can you finish off the kill on a Princess Pecha? Not for the time being. Adium will end up falling down as well. It has not been working out for Chromaspace regardless of where they're positioned.
I mean, as of right now, though, they're playing catch-up, 75-99 as they stand on the point. But Immortal already used, I mean, the closest thing you're here is maybe a Hexafire, and you lose Ethereal early on. You don't have the point presence you really need, and it's just going to be bodies stocking onto the pile.
Yeah, now, especially with the Assert Dominance, this game is over. Mixalizub, yet again, have withstood the damage that Chromaspace have brought to the table. And this time, it's a very important one, Gore. They moved themselves to 2-1 in the set, just 1 game away from taking it.
I mean, that's incredible for them, right? We come into this, and I do still think there is a lot that is maybe weighted for Chromaspace. You can come through and still win it, right? You're only down 2 maps in a row. That's not the end of the world, considering what we've seen. But for Mixalizub to get a win, I mean, they're 1 in 12, Dave. They do not have set wins this phase. They've got a lot of maps that they've been able to put under there. I think 9 total that they've been able to win. A couple here against Chromaspace in the past. Quite a few, I believe, maybe even against Celestial and Interstellar, but not enough that has been able to put them in a position of control and comfort, as I would describe it. And if you get a win here, I mean, that is going to be enough for you to at least say that you ended the phase 2 and 12, which maybe isn't exactly what you wanted. I guess it'd be either 3 and 12 or 2 and 13, depending on how next week goes. But just a good win for them would be really, really solid at the end of the phase right before we go into the regional champions.
And, you know, Chromaspace, that would make them a little extra unnerved. Remember,
distraught.
We don't really know. Yeah, distraught is a great way of wording it, I think, Gore. I mean, kind of destiny feels like it might be in your hands down the last couple of weeks here. But it's starting to slip away, it almost feels like, as Mixalizub is taking this fight to Chromaspace. I'm not sure in a way that they expected. I mean, these two teams have been competitive, but Gore, you got to feel like the momentum is on Mixalizub's side to maybe end this one in Game 4.
Yeah, honestly, the way they controlled Game 1 and then specifically moving forward into Game 3 there, it felt like they were, admittedly, they kind of Chromaspaced it on Split Stone, right? They had a lot of control, then it got a little murky, then they sealed the deal. But I think that they are in the position where if you're Chromaspace here and you don't double down in this next game, it's all going to slip through your fingers because Mixalizub are playing for control and they're playing for the win. They're going for the throat, and I really, really appreciate their style of play.
Gore, you and I are going to take a quick break on our end, and when we come back, we'll see if Mixalizub can do it in Game 4. No further time, and into the map screen we go for map number 4. 4-3, 4-2, 4-3, Warder's Gate for map number 4. Gore, this is not one we get to see all that often, but should be some fun to see if Chromaspace can continue the checkerboard of wins that we're seeing here and tie things up.
Yeah, a nice little sprinkling of a rare map, I would say, at this. The only one that I guess could also then change things up would then be like Bazaar coming through, but granted, we'll take it one at a time that comes through. Mixalizub, that is going to be able to find their control. I tried to hold it, man. I tried to keep the straight face, but it got to me. The glory that they have right now is the control that they had, I think, in maps 1 and 3, but Chromaspace specifically finding it as a 4-2 victory. Granted, a slow start, but still a victory nonetheless there as time went on Stone Keep. have that advantage of being able to say that at least they sealed the deal a little bit faster, right? Mixalizub,
right.
We're seeing 99 to 99s. We're seeing it go the distance in some of these payloads and still go into overtime for them before they get their win. They've been long games, so Mixalizub, I mean, this is going to be one of those times where, as a rarity, again, best of 5 is maybe not as taxing, but it is pushing a little bit on your limits how well you can play. Last time these two teams went 5, Chromaspace still came out on top. They're hoping to do the same, but if Mixalizub can just find themselves a win here, that'd be pretty solid for them all around, and it'd shake up some of the standings.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at momentum, even if Chromaspace win this one, it's about how convincingly it looks going into Game 5. I mean, if this one is long and drawn out, all will probably feel pretty even going into Game 5 if that is where we end up. Ashe has been pivotal for Mixalizub. It's been these slow starting games that end up kind of turning themselves around. Inara had to have been paired with Ashe a good bit. Won't be able to do so this time if you're Mixalizub, Inara rather, banned away. Love the mobility pickup, though, in the Eevee. It's the type of pick that can really make a difference in games like this, and I think it's strong that Mixalizub have locked her in.
Yeah, being able to go Ashe Eevee is a very solid lineup. With the Inara banned, though, I'm interested to see where they go. Inara has been very, I want to say, essential to their compositions because she's just been the forefront for them in all of these matchups. And you go back to Stone Keep when they lost, and it almost feels as though it was maybe because they factored in a triple DPS as opposed to going for the double front line like they had been every other game. And so maybe they, grab something else up in terms of a tank to try and make up for it. Although Makoa, especially on a map like this, feels more like the setup guy. He's going to be on the side, so Ashe may be trying to take up the mantle of pseudo point tank, or they're just going to run it down double sides, essentially, and try to get aggressive with Ashe Eevee, then put Makoa plus other carry, and or vice versa, depending on where the carries go, and just get as aggressive as you can to run down Chromaspace.
Yeah, the last pick is going to tell us a lot, I think, about how Mixalizub are looking to play this one if they draft a little bit heavier in the back line or a little bit more aggressive in running forward. I mean, you do have to be considerate of how your composition is already built out if you're Mixalizub. You have a lot of run-at-you type dive right now, so you want somebody that can work well with that vibe. So that's something Mixalizub will look to do with their 5th and final pick. In the meantime, Fernando and the Mave for Chromaspace. And Gore, this is a flank mobility matchup of old. The Mave up against the Eevee, and it's going to be fun to watch here on Warder's Gate.
Yeah, it is. I'm actually really excited to see how this one will flow, just because of the fact that it does depend on the flanks so heavily. I think Ruckus coming through shakes things up a little bit. Triple front line for Mixalizub. Ruckus rides that line very well. But this is a comp. Look, you go back into Paladins, and I'll say if it's a 3-3 kind of day, which for these two teams it is, this is what you want. You've got more health bars, admittedly then more damage to deal because of the fact that you're going to outlive your opponent. Theoretically, it just lets you have a lot of staying power. If you lose a mid-fight, you don't lose the defense because it's difficult to displace you. I think there's a lot of merits to a composition like this, and the counters aren't necessarily there. I mean, if this Mave pivots into the execute, as I'd highlighted maybe in, I think it was even Game 1, maybe it was Game 2 way back when, then yeah, you can kill these tanks pretty easily, but then you lose the damage in the matchup versus the Eevee, so maybe you're not living long enough to get those executes online.
In we go for game number 4 between Mixalizub and Chromaspace. It's Mixalizub who are on set point as we stand. Chromaspace, they'll have to fight back in here against a triple frontline composition. Maybe you get a couple off tanks that kind of combine for an extra damage dealer there. But mobility is the name of the game for sure for Mixalizub. All of the tanks that they have drafted have some sort of mobility baked into that kit there to close that gap or open that gap, depending on which way they are going. But with the buzzword of mobility floating around, Gore, it's not like Chromaspace are all that far off in that department either. I mean, Khan is going to be able to match some of that, and the Mave especially. This is going to be a highly rotational game, it feels like.
Yeah, that Street Justice is going to come in big for them if it's going to make the difference, but you can't be the first to die if it's going to be able to come through. The small Damba, I mean, this is like just a playing ground for a healer to be able to keep 3 tanks alive. It's going to be a lot of work, but honestly, Damba's the one support that I think can do it pretty easily and make it look good while doing it.
Some opening kills, really, for both teams, but it's Chromaspace. Look at that scoreboard there, 63% from them, but it's Mixalizub starting to fight their way back in. The picture becoming a little bit more clear on how Mixalizub might be able to grab themselves a mid-fight win. Coriel surviving definitely makes things a little bit more difficult, but it's an Eevee. She'll always be able to dive there into the back, but not well enough. He's going to live again. Coriel just getting dove on now. Nauk has overextended a little bit too far. It's an Ice Storm to slow down the re-engage from Chromaspace. Sparks already starting to fly between these two teams. Princess Pecha with the double kill. Uber Spady snags one as well. 93% for Mixalizub, a double kill for the Eevee, and point number 1 on the board.
Well, I was going to say nothing feels as frustrating on flank when you dive a couple of times and the guy that you're diving doesn't die. But then they completely wiped Chromaspace and won the point, so I feel like Uber Spady doesn't care too much that it didn't quite go his way. As long as he was keeping him distracted and away from the objective, it was solid. Now goes pretty deep here, dashes back, and kind of an awkward manner. I'm surprised to see them give up the ground they needed. I think it's because of this payload, specifically on this map. It feels a little more awkward because you do a loop around where there's a lot of control for Chromaspace, a lot of wall coverage that they're going to be able to have, a couple of choke points that they're going to be able to pull you through. And while you could try to use them in reverse here for Mixalizub, it's not necessarily the easiest map to try and find those conversions on.
Sure isn't. And that's why you see the cart sort of planting itself exactly where it is at the moment. So, I mean, should we already just call this one a 7-point game, right? I mean, if this is already what we're seeing on defense, maybe
True.
we just skip on ahead to the .7 mid-fight here. Obviously a lot of fighting to happen between now and then. But it does seem that way, where one team is just way more comfortable on the defense, one more team is way more comfortable on the mid-fights. We've been destined for longer games, effectively, this entire set. Minute left. Mixalizub have made their way in around to the back. It's the cart starting to roll itself in. Davazy has found a backline presence. Unfortunately, there's a kill onto Nepo that maybe makes Chromaspace turn themselves around. So Davazy is suddenly going to get sandwiched here in just a moment as the Shaolin respawns, but there's enough chaos suddenly starting to ring out that it's not going to matter. Chromaspace have lost everyone outside of the con, and the cart finally breaks through that choke, and all it took was a ruckus flank.
And that's honestly something that is going to be necessary for triple front lines in general. I mean, 90% of the time you can do really well and live. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you that Inara, let's say Makoa, and who's someone that doesn't do a lot of damage? I guess Terminus on top of that, realistically aren't going to have the same pushing power as like Makoa Ruckus, right? You get a hook into somebody else that, let's be honest, it's Fat Vivian, right? He's the guy on Ruckus that is going to be able to withstand a lot of good shield, a good amount of damage. And that's essential for them finding success.
Wow, the quick 2-0 for Mixalizub. I say it with hesitancy because we've seen teams go up 3-0 today.
Quick
3-1,
asterisk.
Right, with the asterisks on. How do you say it? Oh my God! What?
Asterisk.
Asterisk. Oh my God! We need to move on immediately.
We got there.
Ramsey laughing at me in the background. Gore, this one really drove home, of course, there by the bit of the back door from Davazy. But Princess Pecha, the one burning away on that 7 streak, the Makoa, lives and dies by that space control, and it's been a lot more living than dying so far this game.
3, 2.
Yeah, and honestly, this is one of those moments, I'm almost timid, like you said, to call it anything when they find the 2-0. But because of the way things have been going for the dive, and I'm looking at the ults as well, it feels really good for Mixalizub coming into round 2 here. Good amounts of control and a good amount of patience could still favor them in getting the dub. You just have to be able to find it. Adium with a good first blood. He was the one that was taken off first last time.
Yeah, but Dovin that dies for Chromaspace. That's a big loss. Good Dread Serpent. Look at how Chromaspace has to flee from the scene. That's going to open the door for Mixalizub, but can you capitalize? Uber Spady says yes. Ethereal falls. Some more damage to be poured in, but Chromaspace have delayed the deaths long enough, even turned one around onto Princess Pecha, who's been so hard to kill. Adium with one in this fight now as well. You gotta be kidding me. It's Chromaspace that were left running, but it's Chromaspace the ones turning around all the damage.
Well, they're going to be able to get back. Comeback mechanic makes this go well, and this is something I was tempted to touch on, but I didn't know whether or not it was going to be appropriate for the time. But this is Chromaspace's map, right? I mean, you choose this as your tiebreaker. Like, this is the one, or I guess not even tiebreaker, the one you want to go to try and stay alive in all of this. And so far, it's been good for Mixalizub. Good control for the 2-0, and they're keeping this staggered out. It's 97%. They're going to be able to get back in here, and that's an Ancient Rage.
These trades just have not been clean enough just yet for Mixalizub. Now you find one, though. Can you get the kill onto Nepo? No, you can't for the time being. Back around the corner he goes. There's some backline dive from Nauk. Mixalizub have started to regain control, regain composure here in this game. It looked like Chromaspace have made their way back in. That is by the wayside. Mixalizub, they'll go up 3-0 with a chance to win the set.
I mean, just being able to find this control really solid. Davosy, I don't know if you need to get that cocky just yet. You're still in Chromaspace territory where things can go pretty wrong pretty fast. It does showcase, I think, how Mixalizub are feeling about this one. Good couple of kills to open up the engagement. The payload's moving forward. I mean, Dave, this is exactly what you want to see for a team that is at the bottom of the standings trying to get themselves another win.
And it is imminent now, it sort of seems. We've had a long day, or a long set, rather, up to this point. That's starting to go by the wayside. It's been 4-3, 4-2, 4-3. We're on the verge of a 4-0 if Mixalizub can keep up the pressure. This is so difficult to break out of. One member of Chromaspace, though, weaves out to the side. That's going to give a small chance at contesting this payload. Dread Serpent flies away and onto the back. Maeve, too low health to recontest, so Chromaspace is going to be without their Maeve just for a little bit longer. Uber Spady with the Ice Storm, and it's now through time and space that flies on in. Chromaspace throwing a lot at the wall here, but not any of it is connecting. Midnight Overpower waiting just around the corner. Finally, Ovin picks up the kill, and it looks like Chromaspace is going to be able to take a deep breath.
I don't know. There's a couple of low health bars still hanging around over here in the onslaught.
No way.
Doesn't seem to be stopping. There's going to be 2 kills coming up big for the Ruckus, and that's a good hook from Makoa. They're still going.
Is that just game? That might just be the game. Gore Mixalizub brute force their way in. This one, until that cart made its way in, even up until the end there, where Chromaspace got totally wept, I wasn't convinced that this game wasn't going to somehow turn around and go 4 points in the other direction.
Yeah.
That is a decimation. That is, what, 5 minutes of game time or something like that for Mixalizub? Unreal from them, and what a way to finish off the set.
Well, hey, you get a 10-2 and 10 Makoa. Seems to be pretty solid there. A lot of assists there.
Up.
18 on the support, 12 there for Davosy. Uber's Payday had a pretty solid performance. I think that just everybody got to be aggressive the way they wanted to. Unfortunately, Ethereal didn't quite hit the mark, I think, what they were looking for. Either of the front lines there for Chromaspace. And that's the turnaround that I will admit I also didn't expect. I mean, that's Chromaspace's map. You don't 4-0 someone on their map pick. I think you take them there if you're Chromaspace. You go to Warder's Gate because you know it's a fringe pick. No one goes to Warder's Gate. We'll win this easily.
Oh.
I guess Mixalizub have been practicing because they definitely showcase how strong they were here. They read the draft well, this triple front line, even though it's an iffy one and really good in a 3-3 point fight meta. It worked out way better here and was able to just steamroll over Chromaspace.
Yeah, a lot of it. I mean, this is a team effort. I mean, we've highlighted the 10 and 2 Makoa, but it's filling the space that the Makoa buys you. That's always so important. So definitely the name in the headline has got to be Makoa. But then, you know, in the fine print down beneath it in the actual article, everyone from Mixalizub has to get mentioned here in this game because no game goes this fast if it's just the one guy going crazy. When I say that, I'm sure there's examples of that being the case, but definitely not in this one. I mean, Davosy, a big play here towards the end. This is the one where I'm thinking, all right, Chromaspace get a pick. There's no way this one goes on any further, and he shows up big. Gore, I think this is a big win for Mixalizub.
Yeah.
Rocky territory now for Chromaspace.
I was going to say, it doesn't change much for Mixalizub. They still hang out
Nothing.
at the very bottom, but they double the amount of set wins they've got so far here in the second half of the year.
Go.
And they really play with Chromaspace's chances of jumping into the top 4 towards the end of this. I mean, we started the entire day talking about how they were neck and neck. It was all map differential. Well, now you not only need your next team up to lose, but they have to lose pretty fast. I mean, ideally, they're losing 0-3 so that they keep that gap going more in your favor if you're Chromaspace. Because climbing the standings, I mean, that's realistically what they have right now.
Yeah, that's all you got to really be looking forward to. Here are how some of the other matchups look. Gore, if you are Chromaspace, you are happy that Celestial are going up against Yoinkers. If there's any team that you want them to be facing, it's the best team consistently in this region. So it is a 4-map plus-minus. So in the plus-minus department, even if it's a 3-0 over to Yoinkers, Chromaspace won't be able to catch up. It'll be a -9 plus-minus for Celestial, 5 and 9 in the win and loss departments. That is assuming that Yoinkers get that 3-0 win. Gore, there's a world where that 3rd and 4th spot comes down to the final week.
There's a lot of pressure, I think, on that matchup. And looking at it, because it's not often that you get any standing switching at the very, very final week. But in Europe, at least as of right now, there's something that can be said. For Yoinkers as well, it's interesting because it's a match that maybe doesn't matter as much unless they just want to keep on this streak that is, well, dominating in Europe, right? So there's a lot of pressure on them maybe to just keep up appearances. Because as of right now, again, you're looking at going into, in a few weeks from now, these regional championships. Yoinkers are currently the favored, Clown Fiesta right behind them to be able to take over the European Championship. You don't necessarily want to show weakness to anybody below the top 3 in the last couple of weeks. Or if you're hiding some strats, maybe it can be amended, but then you have to come out with something insane when we get to those championships in order to make sure you dominate.
That's right. I am intrigued because what we've seen really in each of the regions was these one team starting to really stand out as far as standings go, and now obviously it'll be a regional champion from Worlds. So now is time more than ever for these teams in all these different regions probably to feel like they can catch up and maybe take it to some of the top teams in their regions rather than maybe the individual top teams feeling like they have to compete against one another. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how all of that breaks out. That's it, though, for the European set of the day here in the PPC. Quick break. Be right back into Brazil.